We off in this place, catching vibes, sit back and we blaze in the sky like I'm out of space.
What's going on, Cigar World? What's going on, Cigar Enthusiasts? This is Jack, the Cigar Enthusiast, and we're back with another segment of the Virtual Smoke Deck, man. I am your host, Jack, the Cigar Enthusiast. If you're looking for the fine gentleman that's kind of funny looking, bald head, man, that's Johnny the Cigar Baker. He is actually out for today, taking care of some stuff, man. But, man, we love you, Johnny, man. We're supporting you from the Virtual Smoke Deck, man. I hope everybody is having a great day. It's time to have an amazing show. It is time to have an amazing show. Can everybody hear me? Go ahead and crash into those comment boxes and let me know if you can hear me. If you cannot, go ahead and let me know. So, bam, we are on the Virtual Smoke Deck, man. We got a great guest today, man, a good friend of mine, somebody that has been encouraging and pouring into me since we actually started Dapper D's, since we actually started the Virtual Smoke Deck. A complete game changer, man. So we're really looking forward into, everything that we have going on and everything that he has going on, man. But more or less anything, and let's get into the goddamn week, man. We've had a great week, a great freaking week. Dapper D's introduced this new mimosa tower, and me and my wife decided that we were going to go on this endeavor and try it out and actually conquer this damn thing. And let's just say, I think we did just that. It's been crazy. It's been crazy. Outside of that, man, great cigar week. Obviously, we're still fighting the fight against banning flavored cigars, which is obviously always a soft topic. So if you're not onto that, go to fight the ban flavoredcigars.com or .org, one of them. And go ahead and sign that petition. That actually closes on July 5th. So that's major. We want to get into that. We want to get involved in that, man. If you're new to the Virtual Smoke Deck, go ahead and hit that like, that follow button, and give us a huge thumbs up. If you're watching from YouTube, if you're watching from Facebook, don't be the only one to have this amazing content at your fingertip. Go ahead and share the content out. Share it to your favorite group. Share it to the next cigar enthusiast. Share it to your favorite cigar buddy, man. I don't give a damn who you share it to. Let's go ahead and get the content out, get it in people's hands, because, man, we about to rock a show, man. The newest cigar that's going to come out from Ferio is coming out on this show, man, and you don't want to miss that. Also, our sponsor, shout out to our sponsor, DapperDCigars.com and Dapper D Cigars, located in Jacksonville, Florida, man. Always a great vibe when you go to Dapper D's, man. If you're looking for your cigar needs and wants, make sure you go shop DapperDCigars.com today. And shout out to all the other retailers out there that's doing the damn thing, man. Making everything shake during this whole pandemic. It's not even a pandemic. This is a recession now. We're going into a whole nother cluster freak. But yeah, it's about to be good, man. What else is going on? Well, nothing else. Nothing really else going on, man. We got our host, man. Like I said, Johnny's been out. Is going to be out this week. Can't wait to see him next week for a great show, man. This is a great show for him to definitely be on. And, I'm praying that everything is going good on his end. And, at the end of the day, he enjoying his time off. So with that being said, man, our guest today is a legend in the game that's been doing big things. Big things in New York, and now it's taking it on a global scale. I'm smoking on the actual Metropolitan Maduro, exclusively made by him. This guy is just doing goddamn the damn thing, man. Man, we got to give a round of applause for this guy, man, for sure. Like he out here literally doing the damn thing, and I'm proud of his growth, man. We was actually talking about a month ago or so, and talk about, just our growth processes and, what it takes to actually get to the top, and, always making sure that we give a platform and do that damn thing. And I think that's exactly what Ferio is doing. So with that being said, Mike, turn on your camera. With that being said, man, we're introducing our guest of the hour, the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Herklots. to the show. How you doing, my brother?
Rock and roll. Better with the camera on, apparently.
Sorry
Sorry about that.
Hey, you ain't got to look. You got red. I must embarrass you. I don't want to
That's
embarrass
funny.
you. Everything
That's
going
funny.
good, my brother?
Dude, great. Everything is going great, man. I had a great weekend. Been traveling. Just got home in time to see my kids play some softball and some t-ball, and that's it, man. As you said, doing the damn thing.
Did they win?
Well, in t-ball, everybody wins,
Oh,
and in softball, they made it was the season finale, so they made it through the third round before they were ultimately defeated. But they did great. I'm so proud of these kids. It was awesome. It was great to see them play.
That's the thing about having your own business, let alone your own cigar brand, being the face behind everything is you got to learn to balance that, man. And I think that's the pivotal part of being an entrepreneur, and I think that's the pivotal part of actually growing a brand is being able to kind of lean on the variety of just maintain them. And how's that been for the whole year?
Well, I mean, what's been happening in the last year is obviously very unique circumstances. But to go back to what you said, I mean, certainly owning your own business can have the advantage of flexibility. But what I also think is, so if there is a positive to the last 2.5 years, I think we've all learned, whether we're employers or employees, that there is the ability for flexibility, and there is a renewed priority for life outside of work, whether you own your business or not. And so it was fun to see lots of parents watching their kids play today, whether they own their businesses or whether they work for someone else. Clearly we've learned that time is precious and you need to prioritize your time for the things that matter most. And sometimes that's work, but sometimes it's not. And it's nice to see those kids playing.
Man,
As far as the last,
go ahead, my
yeah,
bad.
no, but so that was a long way of getting to the actual answer, which, just as far as balancing the year, it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy year. I was just in Napa Valley this week, and I was there in November. And when I was there in November, in my sort of opening comments to the group, I said, at the time we were 8 weeks in business. And just getting started. And then I was just there this week, and now we're 8 months in business. And, 8 months isn't that long either, but it's just incredible to think of what we've been able to accomplish in those 8 months. I'd like to think that I've had some reasonable level of work-life balance, but I also know that it's been a hell of a lot of work. And so maybe that balance hasn't been as perfect as I had hoped, but, we'll keep striving for better balance.
Well, at the end of the day, balance is it's a true balancing act for sure. I never seen a guy get on a thin rope and walk across anywhere they walk across with this long pole balancing everything, and it takes them. They get there in a hurry. We get there. It's very delicate. It's very on point and making sure that every step counts. And that's what you're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now is we're making sure every step counts while we're on that rope trying to balance as well as walk.
We don't make a step unless it's calculated and it is deliberate. Otherwise, we're gonna stay balancing as long as we have to until we are certain that this is the right time to put our foot in the right place. And that's Absolutely. What we've done the last 8 months, and it's worked very well. I'm incredibly pleased and excited about where we are so far.
So you said 8 months, man. It doesn't feel like it's been 8 months.
It feels like more or less.
It felt like more. Like this time last year we were talking about Ferio Tego at the trade show. Well, not this time this year, about a month ahead.
Yeah, but we didn't. So we announced, let's do a quick timeline, make sure everyone's caught up. We announced the company in January of 2021. We announced our distribution plans in probably May of 2021.
Okay.
We announced our first release, the Ferio Tego 2021 limited release. We announced in end of August, I believe, and it shipped the very first week of October. So
Makes sense.
So even though people have heard about Ferio Tego, we've been talking about Ferio Tego, we didn't actually sell anything and ship until the very first week of October. So for me, that clock starts ticking the moment we did our first sale, and the first Ferio Tegos were sold first week of October, 2021.
Well, now that you give the timeline, you know the timeline better than anybody on this damn show. That makes sense because I was sure, like, I'm like, Mike, we was talking about this not too long ago, and I remember. You remember the first show we did back? Was it 2020? It was 2021, right? 2021.
It was
2022.
no,
It was one.
it was no, hang on. The first show was 2020 because I'm pretty sure it was right before we announced that we were.
It was right before, or it was right in the middle. It was something
after.
like that.
Hang on, it was after Nat Sherman closed. It was before I announced Ferio Tego, right?
It was. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think Ferio Tego was all the way fully announced yet.
No, because we were on a show, and I remember a couple of times you asking me questions, and I was dancing because So I think it must have been like December 2020.
Yeah, it had
like the end of 2020 or the first couple of days of 2021 because we announced January 6th, 2021 about
but
I was dancing. But then I came back on the show. Again, and then we were talking like, real deal. Then we were actually talking business. This is my third time, I think, on the show.
We're gonna have to go back. I think it's something like that. Well, it's crazy when you have somebody amazing that is just, it's I'll be honest, there's a couple people out there that I probably never interview again. Not that they're just bad people. It was just like it was a terrible fucking show. Like it was like you ask a question and then like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Those are hard interviews.
Those are hard interviews. Very much so. You got to be able to, get involved and actually, enjoy the conversation and get into it, man. And I'll be honest. The last time we spoke, we were texting back and forth, and it's just crazy how the growth actually happens, right?
Well, let me say something right now. Hold on. Let me just say. Because you and I spent a lot of time off air after the last show.
Very much so.
And as much as I can't wait to talk about all the great things Ferio Tego is doing and all of our success, and I want to spend the next hour and a half bragging and patting myself on the back. Before I do that, bro, let me tell you, when the last time we were on, you had a lot of ambitions that you wanted to do for this show. And you shared with me at that time, and I'm very comfortable sharing this with people who are watching. You shared with me that you didn't think you were at a place or a level or at a time in this show to be able to reach out to the real people you wanted to ask on. And I told you, without a doubt, you need to just do it. And I can remember a couple of those names specifically, and now I've watched those interviews. So you have done the things that you didn't think you could do in 1 year. And that's incredible. And I think you've got an incredible platform. And I'll tell you, I was actually speaking with a couple of friends of mine who work for other companies. And we were talking about what are the platforms that are really high engagement, that are reaching an audience. And this show came up. And I'll tell you, we were in the pool at TAA. Talking about, so that's the level of retailers and manufacturers that I was chatting with. And I said, what's moving the needle? What's influencing people? What are people listening to? and there were probably 4 or 5 platforms, some just content, some video, some show, and you were mentioned. And I was like, and I was just asking the question. But the fact that you were mentioned really actually was a point of pride for me, hearing your name and your platform shared, because I was thinking to myself, it wasn't that long ago that he didn't consider himself in that league. And so I want you to know that you are.
I think it's crazy, because that's one of my topics that I had in mind that I was replaying as I sit down and I sit down with Michael Herklots. Everybody know Michael Herklots' name, especially in the cigar industry. If you don't know, I don't know what rock he's been crawled under for the last couple of years, but he's been doing goddamn big things for a long time. And I sit back sometimes, and I told my co-host, and I be transparent with it. 2022, we went in, and you start divvying up your time, right? From running a store to opening another one, to managing the day-to-day operations that kind of go into all of this good stuff, man. And I said, you know what? If I don't get a co-host, man, it's gonna become a very impossible and a hard job to do, man. You're talking about a task that is every Sunday coming on, giving live energy, and just trying to put on a show for not only the consumers, but also the industry, man. Our industry needs shows. And it doesn't, just being transparent, doesn't need shows where titties is out and, freaking poolside, god dang shows and different things that age. It needs shows that's actually going to produce content for people and consumers to really understand what is going on in the industry. And what does it take to be in the industry? You got so many people right now, especially with the influx of 2021, 2020. Everybody's trying to get into the cigar industry, and nobody knows. My personal opinion. This is my personal opinion. Nobody actually knows the work that it takes to get into this industry and be successful in this industry, from a retailer or a manufacturer standpoint. The two people that's sitting right here, and I'm not trying to boast or brag or toot my own horn, but it's just being honest. I mean,
here's what I would say though. Let's make sure that we're very careful here, because there was a time when you were the new guy getting in, and at that time there were a whole bunch of cats. There were a whole bunch of cats saying, "Who does this guy think he is? He doesn't know what it takes." So, and the same thing happens with brands and cigar companies. Every day, every year, there are new people who join. The question is not whether they know what it takes. The question is whether they are willing to do what it takes. And when people are willing to do what it takes, then I say we open our arms and we welcome them and we support them the same way people opened their arms and supported us. And for the few who didn't, and for the few who said, who do they think they are? Well, now they know. But I'm a big believer in, somebody along the way, lots of people in my case along the way, took the approach to say, you know what? If this kid wants to do it and he's willing to do what it takes, then let's get behind him and support him. And let me tell you, the entirety of Ferio Tego's success is because of that attitude. And granted, I have tried my best to work very hard and do the right thing and contribute not just to the companies that I've worked for, but to the industry at large. But there have been plenty of times where people could have said no. And most of the time people say, okay, let's give it a shot, but you have to do what it takes. And that's our job, man. And as far as content, there's different strokes for different folks. And what I appreciate even about some of the more fringe or unique platforms, whether they are poolside or not, they're working hard too. And maybe it's not for me, and that's all right, but somebody is getting something out of that. And so our industry is better for it, because in totality, we have a lot of passionate people from a lot of different walks of life with a lot of different interests and philosophies. And so when you've got all of those different things represented through all these different platforms, all talking about this ridiculously simple, stupid hobby of premium hand-rolled cigars. Man, we're lucky to have all of it.
Yeah. And you know, just for the grand synopsis of things, there's no shots taken. You know, we're all in the industry. At the end of the day, my views and my comments are strictly based off of, you know, what are we doing to push the brands forward and push the
You bet.
industry forward.
You
With
bet.
that being said, man, you know, you had a remarkable 8 months for that matter. Since you want to classify it as 8 months, I'm going to classify it as a year because I know you're
Okay, I'll
looking
take
at
a year.
yeah, I'm gonna classify it as a year. You're looking at your year and saying, "Damn, you know, who would have known that this brand that was also always great and had, you know, the Nat Sherman backing, I'm gonna consume it and I'm gonna go ahead and do great things with it." Man, how's that year been for you, or that 8 months for that matter?
Well, so in that case, we can actually go longer. It's been a year and a half because we
You
announced
just
in
all
January.
we can't keep up with your
Well,
timeline, Mike.
first we were saying business. So business is 8 months, right?
Yeah,
But we started Ferio Tego at the very end of 2020 and announced in
yeah,
21. And so when you talk about like how's the last year been, the last year has been sort of what feels like approaching that final lap if I'm going around a track. But really the first from do the math from from November of 2020 through October of 21, that was all just the work. That was trying
yeah,
to get everything back into production, getting the right formats in production, getting the blends back correct, getting all the printing done. I mean, as we sit here today, 8 months of sales, we have in market 9 core blends
mhm,
across 2 brands with 42 SKUs, and that does not include the 2021 Ferio Tego limited edition Elegancia and Generoso, nor does it include last week's drop of the TAA. That is a hell of a lot of stuff to put in market in a very short amount of time. So
very much so.
the year has just been wild, you know. We've been focused really squarely on the first part of that time, just making sure that the product is right and it's getting in market in the right places, and we're supporting those retailers. And thankfully, we have great support with our distribution partner, Davidoff USA. So those guys have been out there just crushing in every store that they're banging on. We've spent a lot of time with our factories, making sure that the product is right, the blends are right, and quality is right. And so just now in the last, say, 4 months, I'm really starting to now get out and market and do events and spend some time with the salespeople, be able to visit accounts and just say thank you and visit with customers. But we really haven't had the opportunity to do that until very recently. So the next, say, 6 months of the year will really be spent focused on, of course, continuation of product development and product maintenance, but also really getting into market, visiting accounts, saying thank you as many times as we possibly can to consumers and retailers, because everyone's taking a bet. You know, everyone who spends $1 on Ferio Tego, whether it's you in your shop or whether it's your customers in your shop, that's all taking a bet on us. And every time somebody spends $1 on Ferio Tego, I feel compelled to say thank you, you know? And that's not easy to do in, you know, now almost 800 stores. But if there were a way to do it, I would. And so being able to be on shows like this and express my gratitude to a wider audience is important to me. You know, it really is. It's been an amazing, amazing year for an 8-month-old brand that's been working for a year and a half to be in between 700 and 800 stores with this many products, and to have people like them and support them and embrace them and brag about them. It is a tremendous point of pride.
I'm not gonna lie, man. That Furro Tiago that came out, the Elegance and Generoso that came out,
Elegancia Generoso.
yeah, Elegance and Generoso that came out in 2021. I was like, man, if he keeps putting out products like this, man, this brand has no ceiling. Has no
So
ceiling.
I'm happy to let you all know that the 2022s should be announced this month, and we are hoping that they will ship by the end of the month.
By the end of this month.
So cigars are done. They're being packed. They're being shipped to the U.S. We haven't announced the official date because I don't like to announce anything until I know the date. Yeah. But I'm happy to give you the heads up that we are expecting to ship, hopefully by the end of this month. 2022 release will be in stores.
So would that be a limited edition, or would that be a regular release?
Well, so to be clear, Ferio, Tego, Elegancia, and Generoso are annual limited releases in that we make each year's production once, and then that's what's available for the year. If it sells out in a month, then it's gone. If it sells out in 6 months, then it's gone. And then we wait for the next year. So it's very much specifically Elegancia and Generoso. Our flagship Ferio Tegos are what I'm referring to as annual limited releases. But the best way to think about it is like wine. And I'm a big fan of wines. Absolutely. Every year, wineries make their annual release for that particular vintage. And sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. And you hope that vintage will satisfy the year until the next vintage is ready to be released. And sometimes it sells out sooner and sometimes you have a little left over. But every year the production is made and then sent out and available. So specifically for Ferio, Tego, Elegancia, and Generoso, that's the approach that we're taking, which is a very unconventional approach for the premium cigar industry. There really isn't another brand doing it like that. Now for Metropolitan and for Timeless, we're maintaining those as core. We continue regular production all the time, and those are consistent production after production after production.
Now, a lot of people will say, well, Metropolitan Timeless is something that has been, in the portfolio for a long time. Obviously not under your brandage, but it's really been something in the rotation for a long time. We're looking at any cigars that's going to be in, daily production as far as Ferio Tego goes and actually brand recognition in regards to that?
So I think it's important to point out that we really view Metropolitan and Timeless as Ferio Tego brands. And that's why it says it, even on the Metropolitan Maduro that you're smoking, it says right on it clearly, exclusively Ferio Tego.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said that I didn't want the Ferio Tego band to be on the shelf all the time. I want it to be. But I'm unwilling to compromise on quality, and I'm unwilling to waver from strategy. So we're going to see how the 2022 rollout works. We're very confident it's going to be very successful. And we've increased production of the 2022 to try and preserve placement on shelves for a longer period of time, adjacent to, of course, Metropolitan and Timeless. But I am working on, for future, a more traditional core line of Ferio Tego. Certainly not for 2022. But I want to find the right blend and the right formats that could ultimately be a Ferio Tego line that lives in perpetuity, sort of among or with the continuation of those two limited releases.
So talking about Elegancia and Generoso, am I saying it right? No, I'm probably not.
Generoso is right. It's Elegancia.
Elegancia. Elegancia means elegance in Spanish, correct? All right. So elegance. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect. I don't care what you call it as long as you sell it, bro.
As long as you sell it. So it's and speaking of those particular lines and kind of going based off of the general synopsis of the blend from 2021, are we talking about the same blend or did you change some things up?
So I'm glad you asked it. I'm glad you asked it the way you did too. The blends. So let's go away from Elegancia and Generoso for a second. when we re-released all the Metropolitan and all the Timeless, and people asked, well, are the blends the same? Growing up a good Christian, I don't lie. And so it's very important to emphasize that the experience of the blends are the same. But in order to keep the experience of the blends the same, the blends themselves must change. Because if you kept the recipes exactly the same all the time, then as you get new tobaccos that come in, those tobaccos are different than previous years of the same type and place. And so that requires constant revisiting and reevaluation of blends, and then ultimately tweaking of blends to keep the experience the same. So in Metropolitan and Timeless, those experiences are deliberately replicated with every production. With Elegancia and Generoso, we are taking the approach of replicating blend without necessarily duplicating the exact experience. So it actually is more like wine, meaning that we are taking what's available today, and rather than trying to make it taste the same as last year, we are making this year's taste the best in the same style and the same spirit, but with the ability to have some uniqueness, some sort of unique attributes to the 2022 that might be slightly different than the 2021. So we're really taking a winemaking approach specifically to Elegancia and Generoso. Now, like any winemaker, they have a style that they hope to achieve regularly. So we are not going to take Elegancia from being buttery and creamy this year to being in your face, spicy and peppery next year. We are preserving the style of Elegancia, preserving the style of Generoso, but we are permitting some uniqueness with each production.
So hitting on those particular points, as you said, I really felt that the Elegance was really a creamy, smooth, buttery approach. And mind you, you did something that is not really seen, especially within the same core brand. And I feel like you do it a lot, especially within your Metropolitan selection. But you change origins. So I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, Elegance was Dominican and Generoso was Nicaraguan. Correct. So
yeah, so I mean, we are in a very unique position because we manufacture. Now, we don't own our manufacturing, right? So we work with partners, manufacturing partners, but we manufacture in all three major manufacturing countries. There are very few, Honduras, DR, and Nicaragua, and there are very few companies, period, that offer cigars from all three countries, let alone small startups like ours.
Yeah.
But we manufacture in all three countries. But for specifically Ferio Tego, you're right. Elegancia in Dominican with Quesada, and Generoso in Nicaragua with Plasencia.
Yeah. And so can we expect the same thing? Or are you going the same origin this time?
Same.
What is from a kind of a blender's palette, would you say the differences is from 2021 and 2022?
We are lucky that they are going to be very, very close.
Okay.
The 2021 Elegancia versus 22, I think the 22 has a slightly more buttery mouthfeel. The 2022 Generoso versus 21, still dark and savory, but maybe a touch brighter. So the spiciness is a little bit more present up front. But without comparing it next to a 2021, I think it would largely be recognized as consistent. if you smoke them right next to each other, that's when you can start to identify some of the real nuances. But they are very, very close to the 2021 experiences.
So obviously, this is going to be a very biased question. But out of 2021, 2022, which blend would you say is your favorite?
It's an impossible question to answer because
Very.
they are truly both my best work, but they're two different mediums. So it would be like if you make an incredible steak and an incredible branzino, and which one is better? Well, how can you
Well,
compare?
not
fish
in
and steak?
preference to each other. I'm preferencing to 2021 in the same category. Would you say
But that's my point, because you've
okay,
got
got it.
Elegancia, which is so creamy and beautiful and elegant and gracious, and then you have Generoso, which is full and savory and decadent and dark. It's like trying to compare a red Cabernet Sauvignon and a white Chardonnay. They can both be brilliant, but it's very difficult to compare them because they are literally opposites of one another, other than they're both wines. And so for me, they are truly both the perfect expressions of their origins and also of the category in which they live. So if you're talking about, if you were looking at the landscape of mellow flavors in full-bodied creamy cigars, I think the Elegancia is the single best on the market. And if you were looking at full-bodied, dark Nicaraguan heavy cigars, I think Generoso is the best on the market. But they're just very different from one another.
Very much so. So so it's in fair comparison to anybody that may be wondering, anybody that is looking for the Ferio Tiago selection of 2022 coming out. It's safe to say that it is very comparable. Obviously, it changes in a couple of nuances, but it's very comparable to what we got from 2021. When I say 2021 was one of those that it was like, oh my God, you're out of it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think anyone who enjoyed either of the 2021s will enjoy the 2022s equally as much. I think for most smokers, those nuances will largely be undetectable, which is the hope, obviously.
Yeah.
But if people held on to some 2021s and smoked them side by side, now 2021 has a year of age on it, and you smoke that next to a new 2022, you might experience some uniqueness, and that's part of the fun.
Yeah, very much so. So kind of switching gears into, from blends into more of a approach of, we already talked to kind of the balancing act that it took in order to kind of get the brand to where it's at. How are you feeling in regards to taking on that new role? Obviously, Nat Sherman kind of had his own face with the lounge and the predicated time and prestige that it was able to build. Now you are the person that's behind the driving seat. You're taking this plane or this car or whatever you want to relate it to. You're taking it by the helm, and now you're executing this. What is the one main thing that you have learned throughout this journey?
Through the journey of transitioning from like being an employee to being an owner?
Yes.
It's
a good one. I know. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. I mean, there's a lot of things. Like, for example, one of the first things I'll say that feels very different, and you're a father, so you'll appreciate this. Before you had your first child, when you were expecting your first child, and everyone tells you, oh man, once you have a kid, everything changes, which seems like a pretty logical statement. So anytime people would say that to me, I'd be like, yeah, I would expect it to, of course. But literally the moment that child is born, something happens to you that you can't describe, but you feel a love that you've never felt before. You feel fear that you've never felt before. You feel all these things that you felt love and fear before, but just not like this when you're talking about your child. For me, that is a lot like what it has felt now to become an owner. I've worked in the industry for 20 years. I've done events for 20 years. I've advocated for 20 years, 23 years. I forget how long. But to now do it on behalf of a brand that I own, not just on behalf of a brand that I work for, is a very, very different feeling. And it's one that's difficult to describe because some of the daily things I do are largely the same. I talk about the product with pride. I've developed and maintained blends just like I did when I worked for Nat Sherman International. So those things are the same, but just the feeling inside when I talk about it and do it is just different. And so I've just learned to kind of embrace this new owner's mentality. The other thing, frankly, is a far more discerning process of making decisions. You know, I was so fortunate to work for Davidoff for 9 years, for Nat Sherman for 9 years. These were established companies that were clearly investing in growing an already successful business. And so that provides a certain level of funding and budgeting and support that allow you to take a company, let's say from the letter D to the letter F. But we are trying to go from A to B. And going from A to B is a huge lift when you don't have that pre-existing infrastructure of cash flow, of other investment support. And so I've become profoundly disciplined in where we spend and how we spend, and making sure that the things we spend and invest our money in that are outside of product are really, really worth it. And that's certainly something that I considered when I worked for other companies. But at the end of the day, it was easy to make those decisions when it wasn't actually my money, and I knew that there was enough there that we could afford to do these things. Now, that level of risk and exposure and vulnerability is far greater than anything I've ever experienced as an employee.
Very much so. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand kind of what you just kind of hit into and put in perspective, but it takes money to make money, but it takes time and the correct investment efforts to actually grow a brand. And I think that at that time, especially where you are in business is really cultivating an environment that is allowing you to not only benefit, but it's also allowing you to realize, hey, I'm gonna have to work. And mind you, let's take a step back and not forget what he said. He's in 800 stores, and still saying, this verbiage of, being extremely disciplined and knowing where you're spending at and different things of that nature. That's a testament to what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're growing. And yeah, man.
This is a marathon. It's not a dash. It's a marathon. And you have to know. I just watched last night. I flew home from California last night, and on the plane I watched Ford versus Ferrari, which is a pretty amazing movie.
Very much so.
And the driver of the Ford talks about, you have to know when to push the car, but you also have to know when to ease up and let the car, recoup and do its thing. And you have to be able to see ahead and know where a turn is, know when to throw it into gear and punch the gas, and also know when to, ease up and slow down. And even if that means someone's going to pass you, that's all right. Because I'm not trying to just finish this lap. I'm not trying to win the lap. I'm trying to finish the race. And so that means a different level of first of all, understanding the course, understanding the race and how much more there is left to go. and then every turn, making sure that you have a plan before you enter that turn, and a plan to know what to do once you've made the turn and you have a straightaway.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
that's every business, I think.
And what's crazy is, as I sit back and I'm listening to you speak and actually letting my thoughts kind of marinate in my brain, is how many people, how many brands is out there that can honestly sit here and say that they were able to start. I'm talking, you could be talking about people on Shark Tank. You could be talking about the people that sell bagels, and I mean, you talk about freaking TV dinners. I don't give a damn what you talk about in relation to. How many people can say in 8 months I managed 100 stores every single month? You talk about an astronomical.
Listen, but let's be clear. All of what we have done. I mean, and I hope this doesn't sound egotistical, because I don't mean it to, but we have been so fortunate to have things align in a way where we had the benefit.
God's timing.
Well, listen, God played a role in every piece of this,
Yeah.
but we bought the brands with no plan. We started production in so Ferio Tego, we started production in October. Metropolitan and Timeless, we started production in January of 2021. Now, in January of 2021, there was not a single cigar factory that was looking for new business, because every cigar factory was already at maximum capacity. And the printing companies were already operating at 16 to 20 week lead times for printing. Okay. We put our orders in January, and we started shipping in October, and we were a brand new company. And so the only way that's possible is that the Quesada family, the Plasencia family, the Davidoff family in the Camacho factory in Honduras, the Cigar Rings factory in Dominican Republic, and Davidoff USA in the United States all agreed at the same time that Ferio Tego was a priority worth prioritizing. And so we got put in the front of the line to make sure that Ferio Tego came out strong and more or less on time. We were a little late, but when you look at the rest of the industry, the number of back orders and backlogs and delayed releases, we launched in October with Ferio Tego, Elegancia, and Generoso. In mid-October, we launched Timeless, Prestige, and Sterling. And in November, we launched Timeless, Supreme, and Panamericana. And then the second week of January 2022, we released all 5 blends of Metropolitan. That's 9 blends in 3 months. And at 3 months, we hit 400 stores. That's the tribute, not to Ferio Tego. That's the tribute to the factories. That's a tribute to Davidoff USA, all the salespeople, and then all the retailers who were rooting for us, and all the consumers who have been walking into stores saying, "Are you going to get this? Are you going to bring it in? You have to get it. Davidoff is distributing it." Consumers knew more than some of the retailers. And so that collectively is why now, June 12th, we sit here 8 months in business, approaching 800 stores with 42 SKUs and gearing up for limited editions ahead of a trade show. That's why. And so you're right. There's probably no example in the premium cigar industry that's done what Ferio Tego has been able to do. But that's because it's a totality of completely unique circumstances. Every one of those things is just inimitable. And so you put those things together, and that permits something like this to happen.
But you also got to look at it from a perspective as, Mike, there is people dying to be in your shoes, right? And what I mean by that is, you really, like, when you talk about God was in the placement and everything, guy was at the helm of everything. The matter of stars aligning, the way stars align in order to make it happen. Like, shout out to Garrett Datamore out here that rests for us, man. I remember we was talking, and I was like, hey man, I see y'all release, but what's going on? Don't worry about it. Now, actually, it was right before y'all released. I said, hey, Mike, I need to make sure I get my shipment. And you was like, bro, say less. Don't worry about it. I got you. And Garrett calls me the next day like, hey, Jack, hey, I got a message saying I need to talk to you. Yeah, no shit. Because if Mike is dropping something, people have, one thing about the industry is it is so hesitatorial. And what I mean by that, and I don't even know if that's a word, but it sounded good. And if it's not, we need to put that into the dictionary.
Hashtag hesitatorial.
Hesitatorial will mean, people that is hesitant about something before it drops. But more or less, that's the cigar industry. Like, we are so hesitant, man. You can have a brand that has been pumping out nothing but successful numbers. They drop something, whatever it is. They're like, oh, I don't know about that. Hold on. You said.
But you know what, man? I don't hold that against our industry, because what you are talking about is a hesitancy to invest. And,
yes.
The smartest investors apply the same level of discretion to where they put their money as, say, I do when I'm figuring out how to spend our money, right? I mean, we're investing in our company. You're talking about investors, and you as a retailer are an investor. And you have to figure out, you only have so much money to play with. So where are you going to put that money to guarantee return? That I would be hesitant. I was hesitant as a retailer for 20 years. Sometimes you want to see a little bit of proof. You want to see some market data. You want to see some charts and make sure that this thing is really doing what it's supposed to do. But again, to the credit of our industry, there were a whole lot of folks willing to take that chance with us. And of course, it helped that we had a portfolio of brands that had been sold before. So that certainly helped. But for Ferio, Tego, Elegancia, and Generoso, those were brand new investments. And I'm grateful for the folks who brought those in. And I think following on the heels of that, the success of Timeless and Metropolitan have demonstrated that Ferio Tego has real legs. And if you just look at the recognition Ferio Tego received at the conclusion of 21, we got the number 1 and number 3 cigar of the year by Cigar Dojo. We got the brand of the year by Cigar Dojo. We got new company of the year by Half Wheel. We were a number 19 cigar of the year by Half Wheel. We got a number of other awards looking at what we had done. And that was only in the last 2 months of the year. I think when you look at the diversity of our retail footprint and customer base, if you look at the diversity of our portfolio, and if you look at the early accolades, all of that should be enough for any investor who is watching. Now is the time to say, okay, these guys are in it to win it. And if I can add something else, we are in it to win it. The very first check we wrote as a company was to the TAA. We were able to join TAA because of our past involvement as Nat Sherman International, and we were able to join TAA. That's not an inexpensive proposition, but it was the first check we wrote. The second check we wrote was to the PCA, and we joined the PCA, and we made sure that we were going to be at the trade show. And I submitted my nomination to run for the board as a manufacturer. I just got confirmation that I was voted onto the board. We're not just sitting back, trying to be like any other brand. We're not just sitting around hoping that some old legacy will carry our sales and we're just looking for mailbox money. I've spent 20 years in this industry participating and advocating for industry as an employee. So if I'm willing to do that as an employee, you damn well better be sure I'm going to do it as an owner. And we're all in.
So talk about all in, man. We talked about all the the Metropolitan and Timeless, Sterling and Prestige. Talked about the Elegance, Generoso. Is there any other brand that we're gonna see from Ferio Tego that's coming out this year, or in 2023?
Brand, probably not. So I got asked a lot, actually, just in this trip to California. A lot of people were asking about the Epoca brand,
Yes.
and the Reserva blend of that brand also. So of course we own those trademarks. That was part of our acquisition, but we are not looking to launch that brand in 22 or 23 likely. And the reason is, to be perfectly honest, number one, we have a lot of work to do with the brands that we have, and most important with Ferio Tego. And number two, the Epoca brand is a lovely word and a lovely brand, but its story historically is a Nat Sherman story. It was the first brand Nat owned before Nat Sherman became a brand. And so to really thoughtfully bring that brand back, we're going to have to thoughtfully think about how to make that brand have a different story moving forward. And that takes a lot of time and effort. And right now we need to really focus our time and effort on our already proven winners. And that is Ferio Tego and Ferio Tego Timeless and Ferio Tego Metropolitan. We are going to launch new offerings. So without talking dates, because again, without dates, I don't want to be very specific. But we will have the 2022 release of Elegancia and Generoso in the calendar year, hopefully by the end of this month. Could be early July, but we're really hoping for the end of this month. This is also 2022, and Timeless was released in 2012 nationally. So if you do the math on that, there's something to be celebrated. There's something to be celebrated there. So we intend to celebrate that this year. But again, we want to be very thoughtful about not getting over our skis and talking too much about things that we're not prepared to release. But we will celebrate Timeless's 10th anniversary as well in 2022. So that I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, this TAA release was also an exciting addition for the 2022 year. But, back to what we said before, we need to be thoughtful. And I'm very aware that space is always an issue. And to your point, not hesitance. What was your word? I forget your word.
Hesitorial.
There you go. The hesitorial nature of retailers, particularly when space is of concern to every retailer, means that we need to make sure that the things we have already launched are winning, and that every retailer is making the money they need to make with our brands and are selling as many of them as they can. That's our real priority for 2022.
I never understood. I always talked about space and the thing like, I don't want space to be a problem. Space is a problem, and it's no store. I know Jeff and still preach about space. I know they still think about space. You have to be meticulous in what you bring in. Whenever you bring something in a space that's already fully allotted, that means something else has to go. And when something else has to go, you really have to evaluate the numbers it did for the year, how the brand did, the brand recognition aspects of it, and realizing, certain brands just doesn't move in certain areas. And, I never understood that more than I am now. You know what I mean? Especially as we sit here and we're talking about another store and different things of that nature. It's so many different moving components to making sure when you bring it in, you bring in the right stuff that's going to move, that's going to be great for the consumers. And I tell you what, one of my top sellers right now is the Metropolitan High. The Metropolitan High, man. Connecticut. That thing, I mean, you talk about a sweet tip cigar, and a Connecticut body, a Connecticut wrapper cigar, which when you talk about the competition in that wheelhouse, you're talking Fat Bottom Betty, you're talking Tabak, so when you're talking about actually having a Connecticut body cigar, and those plethoras, you're talking about a cigar that's fucking kicking ass and taking names. And I mean, we can't even keep it in stock. I mean, it just goes. So next time I bring it in is hopefully gonna be in the next couple of days. But you better get your slim pickings while you can, because
We're
them
stocked.
things just, yeah.
We're stocked.
Hey,
and thank God, and that again, it goes back to thank God our manufacturers are really delivering the goods. I mean, we have inventory. We structured our orders thoughtfully. We have orders coming in every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, a little at a time to replace. So we're never overextending what we're asking our manufacturers to do, but we're keeping them steady with work. And it comes in and it goes out, and it comes in and it goes out. And we keep a little balance there as we get new customers. But Host as a blend was always a top seller under the Nat Sherman ownership. And so we had a lot of confidence that it would continue as a top contributor under Ferio Tego. And it is certainly proving to be, once again, a really important blend. But don't forget, that blend was developed in 1994.
Oh, wow.
And in 2011, when I joined the company, Metropolitan Connecticut, Metropolitan Maduro, and the Host were the 3 blends that we kept. And everything else that was on the market, we discontinued. And we got back to those 3 blends, and we reset those blends to make sure that they tasted exactly the way they were supposed to from the time they were developed in the 90s. And if you look at companies today, without naming names, there are a lot of legacy blends that are not what they were when they were developed. But that's not what core premium cigar brands are supposed to do. Core premium cigar brands are supposed to be exactly the same. They are supposed to be the same as the last one, the same as the first one. That's what core premium cigars are meant to do. And we spent a tremendous amount of time resetting those brands. And then a lot of my career was not just developing timeless blends and limited blends. A lot of my career was maintaining Metropolitan to make sure that every year it tasted the same. And so it was very important to me under Ferio Tego, as much as I wanted Timeless to be perfect and I wanted Ferio Tego to be perfect, I knew that if Metropolitan wasn't perfect, we had no chance of success, because we have 10-year-old fans of Timeless, but we have almost 30-year-old fans of Metropolitan. So that's what we have to make sure we get right. And so it sounds like we did it right based on the success you're having.
Very much so. Very much so. And I don't think that's a story. I don't think that's a story of just Dapper D's. I think that's a story for every retailer. If you want to fully commit and, get some inventory or something, sell some boxes, man, it definitely needs to be the Metropolitan Hide on Host. Well, it's the
Host is the blend.
Host is the blend. Hide is the size. So Hide is the 6x60. We sell it like clockwork. So if you got a 6x60 clientele that likes a sweeter cigar, man, definitely get into that. Man, there's a bunch of different nuances that we can go into, man. And I know at the end of the day, you just got back. So, we're definitely going to be looking at trying to get you on the show again in 2023. Just to recap, how that year has been, and, everything you're doing, Mike, is, I tell you, it's a testament not only to your character, but it's a testament to your success and where your brand is going, man. We know this is not a dash or 40-yard dash, it's a marathon, and we got to keep running, brother. And everything that you're doing with Ferio Tego, I know you have a partner, but obviously we all know Mike as the face. But I'm pretty sure he has a very pivotal point inside the overall operation side of it. But man, I just want to let you know, man, just keep doing your thing. I can't wait to sit down and talk with you a little bit more at the trade show. Hopefully, gain some more knowledge, man. And again, we're rooting for you on our end as much as we possibly can.
I appreciate it so much, man. And you're Your show is doing great things. You are certainly, you're being noticed, you're being watched, and it's making a difference to our industry, man. So I'm super grateful for the opportunity.
So last question before we leave.
Sure.
Is what is one of your main focuses as now a board member from a manufacturing standpoint for PCA?
Well, I think you run to serve. I think that's the most important thing to remember. Whether it's politics or whether it's a board like this, you are running to serve the members. I'm not running to inject my ideas. I'm running to serve the members. So I think my biggest plan, for example, in 4 weeks when we get together, is to listen. I've been at every PCA trade show since 2003 in all of its iterations. And I've been active. I was on the TAA board for 5 years. I think the PCA is in a very unique time right now. It faces a pretty significant identity crisis. And this is nothing I haven't said to the board already. We have tended to equate the PCA or IPCPR before it with a 7-day event, when the reality is PCA is a 365-day-a-year association. And arguably, it is the single most important association specifically for the premium cigar industry. And so my biggest goal is to help navigate the waters in a way that is able to separate those two roles. Obviously, the trade show is a critical part of our industry. The trade show is also a critical part of the association, but the association itself plays a much larger role in our industry, and I'm not sure that role has been amplified or necessarily clarified in a way that it probably needs to be. And so my hope is that my involvement, especially because of the hats I've worn over the last 23 years, my perspective is unique. So I've been a retailer. I've worked for small mom and pops. I've worked for major private companies like Davidoff. I've worked for major public companies like Altria. I've had a lot of very unique experience, and that gives me a lot of unique perspective. And what I hope I can do is bring that perspective to this board in a way that can take what we are hearing from other manufacturing members and from retail members and can put that together in a way that is able to find where are the places we are the most closest aligned, and then agree on those before or rather than spending so much time disagreeing on some of those few fringe areas where there are differing opinions. And those differing opinions are great because that's where you have specific companies or specific segments fighting for their own business interests. Of course, that's what every business needs to do. But we can't do that at the expense of the industry as a whole. And largely, we are much closer aligned than we are apart. So I hope I'll be able to sort of bring some of my past experiences to really amplify our commonalities in a way that we can realize we are actually much closer aligned largely, and then hopefully and collectively find compromise in those areas where we disagree. And ultimately also recognize that there are places we will never all agree. Just like as a country, we are never always going to agree on everything. But believe it or not, largely as a country, a lot of us agree on a lot of the same stuff, regardless of what party or what side of the aisle we live on. Most of us live in the aisle. There's only a handful of folks sitting in the seats. The majority of us are standing in the aisle. And I think if we can find a way to put the spotlight on the aisle, whether that's as an industry or as a nation, frankly, if we can put the spotlight on the aisle and realize and listen to what's being said, man, there's a lot of great things happening, and there's a lot more great thing. There are a lot more great things to be done in the aisle, and I hope as a member of the board, I can contribute to that.
Well, Mike, we definitely feel like you're the person that can at least get everybody to the table and have legitimate conversations, because I think that's something that we definitely need. I love Josh and I love Glenn over at PCA, but right now we're from internally we're a city divide, or our industry divided, however you want to specify that, and we need to really come together.
You know what? I'm gonna counter that comment.
Okay.
We are not an industry divided. I think that there is a profoundly vocal minority that is divided, and that is what becomes amplified, and that is no different than politics.
Yeah.
What becomes amplified are the things that create the most controversy, the most discussion, keyboard warriors commenting, but then retreating back to their own page to look at people that agree. But those are on such small fringe topics. As an industry, we are not divided. As an industry, we are largely aligned and together. It is on the fringe that we are divided, and that is where I think it's okay to be divided. The difference in perspective is that we are not amplifying where we are aligned, because we're all in agreement. And so we don't talk about the things that we're aligned on. We only amplify the things that we're divided on for the sole purposes of trying to get more people in our corner to further divide the issue. And that's ridiculous. That's not how things get done. Things get done by focusing on where we are aligned, focusing on the things we have agreement on, amplifying those to show that, in fact, we are a very healthy business, and we are also collectively working to find areas of agreement where they may exist on some of those further fringe opinions. But we are not divided as an industry.
Okay. I would say that in case in point of what you're saying, and I'm going to say that there has been, so obviously we sit down with everybody, right? We sit down with quote unquote the far left, the far right of the cigar industry. Okay.
Yep.
We have sat down with people that say PCA and everything that the industry is doing is working. We have sat down with other people and said that everything that they're doing is causing more chaos. And, I always sit on the side of what are we doing that's betterment for the industry? And why the hell can't we just come together for the fulfillment of processes and actually executing and striking down some of the false news, or the fake news for that matter, that is being put out by the FDA and different things of that nature. And, I as a retailer, I guess I always sit on the back end, and you really don't know what is being said at the table. You don't really know what's being said in those closed conference rooms. You don't really know what's being said on those Zoom calls, but you're just hoping and praying that one day, just one day, that the PCA trade show, and this is how small I'm thinking, PCA trade show will be able to get back to the general synopsis of what it used to be. Every single place, every single main player in the same building, being able to fellowship, being able to express their love and different things that they have for the industry, being able to express what the industry is facing, being able to come together and come to a game plan, being able to put money into the pot to figure out and bring the key players to the table to figure out the game plans.
Well, let's remember one thing. Hang on, I'm sorry to cut you off, but one thing
fine.
I want to point out that I believe is a fact, and if I'm wrong, we'll research it. The companies who are not participating in the trade show are still members in good standing of the association.
Now
I think that's an important.
That's something to research.
I think that's an important difference. I believe those companies are all members in good standing of the association. They are just not supporting the in-person 7-day trade show, which brings me back to my initial point. The PCA is not an event. The PCA is a trade association that works 365 days a year to defend this industry. And if you look at the funding, a lot of money is coming from very few companies, some of which don't participate in the trade show or have not in the most recent years. So I think that's an important distinction because there has not been necessarily, this is not abandonment of association. This is a business decision for a trade show. And so everyone gets to make their own decisions. But I'll tell you, I saw an interesting interview with Riste. And Riste has what a lot of people consider to be unconventional products. And he was asked if he felt like he was a part of the industry. And he said that there were times when he felt that he wasn't because he was made to feel like he wasn't. I don't know Riste well, but I was really moved by that interview, and it was with Abe on KMA. And I was moved by that interview because, to me, I took that personally as a failure. Just as another guy in the business, that I hadn't had an opportunity to meet Riste and learn what he did, because we should all, back to where we opened, we're all new guys at some point. And if you're willing to invest in the industry, whether you want to follow the path that everyone else has or whether you want to think outside of the box and be different, you're still contributing to industry. And as industry leaders, it's our job to reach out. But it's equally important for those sort of less conventional folks who don't feel a part. They need to reach out too. So this idea that we sit in our corners and wait for the other person to extend a hand because we are deserving of that extension, that mentality has to change. Both parties should feel compelled to extend their hand across the aisle and say, from the old guard, welcome. We need to learn more about what you're doing, and we need to teach you about what we're doing. And likely the same. The new folks need to reach out and say, hey, I'm new, so I want to introduce myself. I want to tell you what I'm doing, and I want to learn about what you're doing. And if we all spent more time listening and learning to what other people are doing instead of just talking into our own echo chamber about what we're doing, we would be a much better industry. We'd be a much stronger association. We'd have a much better show. And again, back to what my plan is, I hope we can do that.
And, I think a lot of this conversation is definitely one that ought to be had in amongst the people that make decisions. And, this is what you just stated about Riste. I haven't seen the interview, and I'm going to actually go look at it. But that is something that it's not far-fetched, like from what I heard. And at the end of the day, it's all about the betterment of the industry and the building of the industry. And, and I think that's why, I love, people like you that's willing to go on a limb and say, hey, look, I support you guys, but there's some stuff that's not going right here. And we need to fix those things. And at the end of the day, I think, speaking from a retailer standpoint, that's something that we like to hear, right? We all know when things are going good and we don't need the association, then everything goes goes well. But you also have Crash Bandicoots out there that is,
but the reason things go well is because we have the association, and because they're doing what they're doing.
And absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I don't want that to be misconceived or misperceived as something that is different, or I'm coming combative to the PCA. I love PCA, right? But my job is not my job is not to spread the love that I have for PCA. Let alone my job is not to spread the love that I have for Ferio Tiago, right? It's to come and have realistic conversation. This conversation that nobody wants to have on air. The ones that, oh my God, he's getting shaky, real shaky right now, and put that stuff on the air. And I always told people, the virtual smoke deck is not the place that we're gonna come and talk about. Hey, Mike, how's everything going? What was your first cigar? Did you like it?
Right.
What did it make you happy? And business is good, man. Tell me, what account that's doing. Like, I don't give a damn about none of that. At the end of the day, I tell people, one, don't come on my show and throw hatred to anybody. But I'm also gonna say, I don't necessarily tell you guys, but I also have an understanding agreement that, hey, when we talk, we're gonna talk uncandid and it's gonna be unscripted. I don't send you a script of what I'm gonna talk about. It comes as it comes, and I think that's what's best about it. And it's good to have those organic conversations that is really cultivating an environment that say, oh, wait a minute, we're not all together. And this is not Jack saying, hey, the industry is so divided. We're Republican and Democrats in this mug. No, we're not. We all have a very grave understanding of what it is that we're looking to do and looking to achieve. But there are some difference and commonalities that we have to figure out in order to really get to a point where we can all hold hands and say kumbayas. Now, you did make a statement here, and this is the first time I've heard this. I've talked to a lot of people now. You did make a statement that says, hey, there's people that has not been participating in the last couple of years that's, fully active and in good standing with the association. Now, that's something that I'm going to put on myself to figure out, because I really want to know that. Because, again, if it's not, then this is something where we need to be pulling them back in and saying, hey, what is really the issue and what can we carry out? Because I know the stuff I hear and the stuff you hear. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. There is some secret conversation. There's some Zoom, some board meeting conversation that has happened that has gotten to this point. We all know that trade show is not only, obviously there is a lot of people don't really realize how much information is put out at PCA, but in the seminars and the panel interviews and different things, you learn so much, not only into government politics, into, national level politics, Congress, Senate, but you also learn a lot of the back end stuff, a lot of the back end struggles that is happening in Nicaragua, a lot of the back end stuff that happened in DR, Honduras.
But that's what a typically a convention is. Like my dad is a retired pediatrician. When he would go to conventions and trade shows, you went for the seminars. Yes. You go to learn. Then you go hit the show floor. You see what's new. You meet a couple vendors. You see a couple new products, a couple product demonstrations. But you go for the lectures. You go to learn. You go to leave better than when you arrived. That is what a convention and seminar is meant to be, and that exists at PCA. But when you go to PCA, the audiences for these seminars are not the membership. It's a much smaller percentage relative to the number of people who are there. And that speaks to mindset, that speaks to goals. We tend to, as an industry, think that that we know best. But I certainly don't know best. And I learn more when I sit in a room listening to other people who know more than I do. And if we all temper our egos a touch and allow ourselves to listen to other perspectives, then even if you do own 5 stores and you've owned them for 20 years, when you listen to someone who's owned the store for 2 years and is kicking ass, Don't look at that person as the new guy who's competition. Look at that guy as new inspiration who is doing things differently and winning, and
Yeah.
figure out how you can apply that to your business. That's how we evolve. And the incredible thing, if you think about our industry, of all the legacy companies that exist in our industry today, legacy, there are very few founders left. A lot of them have retired or pulled back or have passed away. And so you have new generation leaders in some of our most legacy members. And those new generation leaders at one time were young with innovative thoughts that likely differed from their parent. And
Very much so.
they pushed for their parents to listen to them, to take their company in a new direction, to continue to evolve and grow. But now some of those leaders are older and mature,
Yeah.
and there are new people coming in, and it's easy to be the young one with the new ideas, pushing and pushing, hoping people listen. But the only reason they were successful is because their elders listened.
Yeah.
They were humble enough to listen,
Yeah.
and they were strong enough to let them try. And they may have failed, they may have succeeded, but it didn't make a difference. They tried it. That's real leadership. We have to understand that things are different today, and so we have to be willing to try new things, to listen to new ideas, to get new perspectives, and to try new tactics. And that's not always going to come from the longest serving folks in the room. Sometimes they come from, the newer thinkers.
Yeah.
And the good news is, in our industry, we have all of it. And not only do we have them, but we have passionate people with strong convictions. But the other piece that we need to make sure is that the young ones or the new ones still maintain a certain level of respect and reverence for the people who came before. Those people who came before are not dinosaurs, and they're not irrelevant.
Yeah.
Those are the people who got them to the dance.
Yeah.
Those are the people who have paved the road that has made it easier for the new ones to come in and be able to do things differently and disruptively and take a path this way or that way. It's because of the people who have come before. So if the older generation becomes a little more open-minded and the younger generation brings a little more reverence and respect, we are a lot better for it.
Yeah. Mike, you're absolutely right, man. And I know we can go down the avenue of this topic for a long time, but I think we hit on the nail on the head on a lot of the content, man. And I tell everybody, man, I love what I do. I love our industry. I love the people in it, and as long as we can keep bringing those different mindsets and mantras to the table, we're always going to succeed. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your efforts and everything that you're doing to build this brand, this not only your brand, but this industry as well on a day-by-day basis. We respect you. We appreciate you so much. We can't wait to see you at the show.
I appreciate it. And everyone, if you're not following Ferio Tego, please follow Ferio Tego, buy Ferio Tego, smoke Ferio Tego. And I appreciate everything you do.
Absolutely, man. Go to Instagram right now. Go to Facebook right now. Follow Ferio Tego on Instagram right now at this very moment. Also, if you're new to this segment, man, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that follow button, and give us a huge like on YouTube. And if you're following us on Instagram, if you're not following us on Instagram and Facebook, man, go ahead and go follow the Virtual Smoke Deck live on Instagram and Facebook for all the updated content. Go check out our sponsor, DapperDCigars.com, for all your cigar needs and wants. So go follow them at Dapper D Cigars on Facebook and IG as well, man. We are the Virtual Smoke Deck. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Father Bob, thank you so much for coming by. We appreciate you guys so much for everything that you are doing and all the commitment you have to us. And you guys are freaking amazing. Until next time, I will see you next week for another splendid show. We are the Virtual Smoke Deck, and I'm gone.